Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from Mason Works Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Brooke Grove. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, so good to see you, Kathy.
Oh, I love you so much. I'm so excited that we could coordinate this with both of our crazy schedules. Thank you for making it happen. You guys, if you don't know Brooke, you really want to, and she's just getting started, I believe. She's on the cutting edge of so many wonderful ways to help humanity awaken to their divinity, which is why I adore what she's doing. She's a trauma survivor, a near-death experiencer, a multidisciplinary healer in co-creation with spirit. She's a former psychotherapist, and she has advanced degrees in clinical psychology, marital and family therapy, and clinical art therapy, as well as shamanic energy medicine, quantum fieldwork, and transpersonal neuroscience. And she's a movie star. She's been in several documentaries, and she'll be a movie star more, I am sure. So, Brooke, we got to meet at IONS multiple times in our multiple years of doing this, I just love your energy. I love that I kind of resonate that I don't have to explain things to you. And that's part of it. But could you, for people that are just meeting you, could you tell people a little bit about your story?
Yes. Well, again, thank you for having me, Kathy. I feel like I'm having a bit of a homecoming being back in your energy field.
Oh, thank you.
It's been a while. That said, for me, a lot of shifts occurred after my peak transpersonal experience, which was my near-death experience in 2010. At the time, I had been becoming a clinical psychologist. I was at the very end of a very rigorous integrative degree, studying two things at once and taking perhaps a little bit too much in scholastically and as a therapist and clinician, and working on the dissertation, simultaneously. That said, my body began to systemically shut down, and no one was sure how or why. It happened really suddenly, as if overnight. I had been in really good health. I was very young. And then all of a sudden, I started having crippling joint pain, severe asthma bouts marked by chronic bronchitis and pneumonia. I was diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease at 25, I believe, and a boatload of other autoimmune diagnoses. Although they didn't resonate with me as a person, I did know something was very wrong. I had this growing sense that death was lingering in my field, and I couldn't put my finger on why. And so I traveled east to Hopkins, who at the time had the leading autoimmune research center. However, before I get to Hopkins, I have a flare up. And this flare up is so severe, it's hard to really show it to you now in good health. But my hands were locking, they're turning purple. I couldn't get up and down stairs, I couldn't keep food down. I had severe locked jaw and inflammation and just excruciating pain. And so I called the doctors asking what I could do. And they instructed me to benignly increase the medicine. Unfortunately, it wasn't benign because my liver was also toxic. It was failing. And so when I took the medication at a dose that would not impact a normative person, it actually shut down the liver. And when the liver failed that rapidly, I fell, got a traumatic brain injury, which ultimately leads to coma. And at the same time, my lungs and my kidneys expire. Now, through the miracles of modern medicine, I'm helicoptered to the hospital. I'm in ICU. From ICU is when my near-death experience occurred. And in it, in summation, I am lifted out of the body, a complete orb of consciousness. I'm catapulted into the most hi-fi space of technicolor, colors, hues, vibrations, frequencies I have yet to ever encounter in this realm. Everything is just magnified and quantified infinitely. the intensity, rather than being overwhelming, is a sort of resonance, a homecoming, a knowing that there's no separation between those intense colors and myself. This intense feeling of unconditionality, this intense feeling of love. It is beyond words. And in this space, I was greeted by three beings of light: an amethyst, an emerald, and a ruby. And these guides were familiar to me from my intuitive childhood. In their space, it was as if my entire being, my oversoul, the original part of me that split from our creator, was recalibrated, was healed, was held. All of the worries, all the knowings, all the limitations, all the personality of Brooke, the person, begins to dissolve and fade. And I was in the space of the most beatific light, this light that magnetized me towards it. And I wanted so much to merge and to become one with it. However, as I approached it in this space, I slowly began to come back into awareness of a body, of a story, of a life, of a mission, of a purpose left behind. The angels speak to me at this time, but it is through telepathy, through inner knowing, through frequency, through resonance. And let it be known that I have the opportunity to merge and reunify with this light. All things do, all things spring forth from it. And yet, if I choose, I may also go back to the body, for indeed there was a purpose, there was a mission, there was a goal. And at that point, they downloaded images and knowings and awareness into me that were of sublime resonance, sublime poetry. And in receiving those, I did wish to return. Ultimately, I found my way back through their guidance, catapulted back into a very broken body, woke up in shock to ICU, where I was strapped down to a bed with a PICC line into the brain due to brain damage, potential brain failure, and brain death. They had given me a 1% chance of waking up naturally, and they assumed I'd be in a vegetative state. I woke up paralyzed in this body that was strapped down and intubated, and unbeknownst to me, my entire world had changed. Now I was back in this very 3D reality-based existence. However, I was no longer the same person. That began a revolution of being, of shifting, of changing, of rediscovering, of remembering who I am, that continues to this day, 13 years later. Hopefully that's enough for that detail, Kathy. Let me know.
Wow, that was fantastic. I have heard you tell your story before, but that was so well done because I could follow with you and experience it. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I didn't want to go into too much detail to take away from our time, but I wanted
Oh
to
no, it's perfect. Thank you. So I want you to explain to people that may be going through the dark night of the soul now about this integration of when you have that experience of realizing, oh, I'm the creator of you. So you come back, you realize you choose to come back to your body. The choice was a painful one, but meanwhile you have this knowing of this bigger playground or storyline that's available to all of us that we forgot. How could you help us understand how to integrate that or what that looked like? Because the shock, I know that I'm still integrating things that I had 20 years ago. So, and yours was, from one perspective to this expanded view just quickly. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because it isn't, I don't know if you consider it trauma work or if you consider it enlightenment.
A little bit of both. Like my one tantra teacher likes to say the exquisite agony of awakening. And I love that because it really is the slope of it. There's this beauty that you can't put your finger on. But when you are processing it through this very older computer, the human body, the human vessel that's just learning to upgrade. It's like, that old saying, garbage in, garbage out. And if you're not choosing to receive the highest frequency and you're taking in what this realm is saying, then you're going to have a really hard time integrating and making sense of what's beyond the physical, the non-ordinary.
Right.
And so,
But don't you, I'll just ask one more thing, but don't you feel that that's the contrast of wanting to fit in and wanting to, like, not knowing how to integrate the blessings of it into this field, but for being forever changed in your perspective?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. It's like the poet Mary Oliver said she was given a box of darkness and it was a gift. And it took her time to understand that. We have these peak experiences that are so beautiful, but to truly integrate them, often we have to become like a baby. If you watch a toddler or like a 9 to 12-month-old that's struggling with walking, they get up really enthusiastically and they're all gung-ho and they're going for it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they fall and it's like, oops, and they're crying and they're upset, but they don't stop. They allow that feeling, they express it, and then they keep going forward. Often I say that learning to integrate these experiences is much like being an older baby or a toddler. You are aware that there is a place that you're going. You're aware you can do it. You're aware somehow the answer's within you, but you don't have your balance yet. You have to work on your stamina. You have to pay attention to what's in your environment and how you're in relationship or under the influence of these factors. And so integration is like a series of becomings, a series of evolutions. And you have to be open to the nature of it, which in this realm is non-linear expansion. So there's a lot of progression, a lot of regression. And to meet them in the true benevolence of the divine means to have radical acceptance, radical unconditionality. And that is so far from the way we are indoctrinated to perceive ourselves, to perceive our world, and to perceive others. So integration really becomes the communion of these experiences. How do I show up and continually receive this? How do I constantly embody the divine? And then how do I put that out into the world? So though it's not always pretty and it can be very messy and difficult and at times very lonely because you find yourself in isolation as you process these things that are still becoming new information for much of our awakening world. But to me, integration is the core of having a transpersonal experience. Without it, you are talking about awakening, but you are not talking about actually embodying the awakening.
Perfect. And embodiment is the whole game.
Yes.
For many trauma survivors, they're more than comfortable to be out of body and spend a lot of their life. And you sort of went, how do they navigate the world? They're barely here. But then when they get embodied, that's where all the power is, right? That's where all the that's the whole reason we stood in line to get these bodies to be here right now, right?
Yes, definitely. Embodiment's definitely the core of it. You and I have talked about this before with other topics. There's just so much of a glorification and kind of a magnetic force to the story. And it's very easy to get stuck there and romanticize it. But it's really, how do I put it into action? How do I take what was shown and make it an inherent part of me?
So part of this is a recall. Like I know with my spiritually transformative experiences, I had one big one over 20 years ago, and I wake up in the morning remembering it every day. I have. And so then I get to use that as my compass to bring in that knowing and that light and love every morning. Do you find that that's what you're doing as well? Or do you find that when you're working with other people, that's their recipe for transitioning into their new self?
I would say there's no recipe. It switches day in and day out. I've found myself, sometimes I just see the colors of the angelics that I described and I'll weep just because I remember, the intensity of them there. And yet here they are in this earthbound way, and it's poetry to my soul and remembrance and holy.
Yeah.
Yet at other times, it's very, I don't know, almost like enlivening and somewhat shocking how information comes through, because it's completely unexpected. And so for clients and persons I work through, I've just really adopted an openness to never knowing what's going to come through. And as long as it's in the highest resonance with light, it's all welcome. So it is surprising. And I don't think you can ever get bored in this work, Kathy.
Yeah. That's what I find too. And I love that you said that, because the next question I have about all of this is the courage. Because once you come back from a formative experience, everyone I've met through IONS and through a lot of the work that I've been doing for 24 years, when they've had a big experience, they come back like, I'm going for it. They come back without the fear of what other people think or the construct. A lot of times they don't have the words. That's been my story. I'm learning the words, learning the articulation, but the feeling is there. It's prominent. And how would you explain that about the courage or the mission, whatever you want to call it, that creates this forward movement rather than staying in the shadows? How would you explain that?
Well, there are many that seem to be having these experiences a little bit ahead, like in a way show or a sense of being of the collective, so that they can really exemplify through embodied courage and stepping into places where their voice, their throat chakra opens, and they can be a guide or a teacher for the newly awakening. Now, that said, many of us are warriors of light. It was really part of our blueprint, our soul's overcode to do this work. I do want to say, though, there are many persons that are newly awakening, or how I myself was, and many of the clients I serve, who have that courage, who have that conviction, but it takes years of clearing away the debris for them to actually have the inner resourcing, the inner support from their own ego identities. Because we have to remember, the ego identities die over and over again in the wake of a transpersonal peak experience, whether it's a near-death experience or an STE or anything of the like. The reality is, everything you know of who you were before has to fully die and begin to evolve before most of us are willing to step out with that conviction. So as far as persons who are doing it and who are amazing and who are out in the public, I clap and applaud wholeheartedly, but I want to also say it's okay to be in a soft and tender place if you're newly awakening. That is normative and entirely healthy. You still have the absolute potential to embody it and to speak to it and to teach with it. But it is very, very important to respect your human animal, your limitations, and process the trauma and the death first and foremost.
Oh, beautiful. Beautifully said. Thank you so much. So I want you to know that Ishtar's here. You said intense when you said love it and intense on your story. And Lena's here, and she says, what a beautiful description of her experience. So I want you to know the Brook Grove fan club is in session. And I'm not the only one. So Brooke, when we're talking about the shadow work right now that everyone has to go through, there is no escaping it. That's what this time calls for, where we're looking at I think, restructuring of just about everything that's in this 3D environment, whether it's education, and you went through the whole system, so so much of this is not, it's structured not really for competency. It's structured for grades. It's Right. And so you look at every politics, education, science, all of this is found on hierarchical skills that really don't speak to the loving pattern that is really the basis of this whole consciousness that we're in. How do you see this time period that we're going into with knowing that all these changes have to come? Because that change is painful. Change is traumatic for most people. And we don't have hindsight right now. We're in it, and everyone's in it. It's not just the ones that volunteered. Well, I guess I don't know how to put that, but how do you see that? Because you're working with people that, and your expertise on trauma and therapy, basically, the art therapy and the other kinds of therapies that you do, whether it's soul reunion work with the shamanic work. How do you see this time period as far as us coming through it, the human, whether it's ego or not ego, because the ego has its place, I believe, on the side. It just doesn't have to be scared about everything.
Well, the ego can be a powerful ally. I mean, at its highest and best, the ego identity merges with the higher self. And I feel that's where we are. I mean, no one likes where we're at right now because it's uncomfortable. Yes, change is uncomfortable. But if we're not made uncomfortable, guess what? Most human animals won't shift. And so this place that we're at right now, while on the surface, it looks very dark, and I keep hearing that from so many persons, the reality is that stuff was always there. It was just simply suppressed into the collective shadow. Now, both the earth, humanity as a whole, we're all starting to push it up to the surface. So it's going to be taxing to those that have been boundaried up against it, or resistant, or are really set on black and white ways of being and thinking. The reality is the full spectrum has always been available, has always been beckoning, and is ready for us now. We just have to choose to accept. And that can be really scary because we've been, as a culture, stigmatized to fear the holy unknown. And the truth is, that's the birthplace of creation. It's a very yin energy. It's very feminine. It's very restorative. And it will open us up to pathways of creation we haven't seen in I don't know, perhaps as long as our recorded history goes. It's a great opportunity. It is not a deficit. Yet we do have to welcome it as such. Our language is energy. And so every time we're giving a voice to despair, or we're saying something is entirely dark, we are giving it power over ourselves. And the ultimate evolution of the human species and our consciousness is to admit that we are miracle creators and that we have access to manifestation in the here and now. And that comes from seeing the unknown as opportunity. And that's the invitation right now. Humanity's invitation is to shift how we're perceiving the mess as an opportunity to collectively awaken and to become more interdependent. We've been so focused on individualism, and it's been to our own deficit.
Oh, that is so perfect. And I love that you brought up reality crafting or creating. And that's from the Seth materials originally in the 80s, 70s and 80s that we are creating all of this, and you get to realign to what you prefer and what you want. And once you're in union with others, you can do this unified version rather than the self-serving version. That's perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So as far as this, your work right now, are you seeing any specific trends with the people that are coming to you? Are you seeing more shamanic work where people are doing their soul retrieval more? Or are you seeing that these people need tools or a reframe of all of the shadows that are showing up? Are you seeing a specific trend?
There's two trends that have come forth in my work, which are totally, they integrate what you just spoke to, but they are a bit different too. When I began this practice, I was really helping persons that had had peak experiences integrate them. So a lot of near-death experiencers, a lot of people with STEs, a lot of people who had opened the door to plant medicine and really wanted to contain it, clear it, and integrate it. So those were the first way showers to come forward. But in the past 2 to 3 years, as things have begun to radically shift, I've seen two populations step forward that surprised me. The first being scientists. I had this stigma, my own co-creation, my own ego's narrative that was false in the end, but basically that leaving clinical psychology was just going to put me to a certain population and I wouldn't be taken seriously by the academics, by the scientists I had trained so rigorously with. Surprisingly, so many of them are the persons who now step forward and reach out to me regarding this work. A lot of persons that are in the field of psychotherapy, that are in modern medicine, that are in even the clergy, are starting to come forward and want to integrate the transpersonal. They're realizing that spirituality was taken from their professions and that's taken something from them. Just looking at psychology, the real etiology of the word is study of the soul, and yet that's absent in most typical trajectories. And so that's been really exciting for me. The second group that really has come forward since the beginning of my practice, though I didn't anticipate it, are starseed children or rainbow children. And what's exceptional about that population is I've spoke very openly about my hesitancy to rush to labels and nomenclature. Despite that being my training, it just does not resonate with me. Modern psychotherapy requires a diagnosis at the initial session that follows you potentially for the rest of your life. A diagnosis made within the first 50 minutes of meeting someone has some question marks regarding validity and reliability per my bias. And so to have these children who the parents know are highly sensitive or have inattention issues or whatever else may be labeled as neurodivergent, including and not limited to the autistic spectrum, they're now bringing them to persons like myself. And rather than focusing on what would be the deficit in modern psychology, which emphasizes psychopathology, we are looking for the transpersonal. We are looking at where is the skill set and the strength, what is exceptional about this child and this individual, rather than brand them as needing to adopt to a failing system. We're working to heighten those gifts within them so that they can go out and use those gifts to be of service to the collective. So having these children come in who are on very different vibrations, very different pathways, has been a really exciting part of my work.
Wow, that's fantastic. So when we're talking about plant medicine and the other ways to open up your psyche, are you pro that method of expansion, or are you feeling that because you know there's ways to get to peak states with or and without the auxiliary of plant medicine? How do you feel about the trend of that?
Well, I feel that trends are dangerous as a whole in this culture because typically people, they jump into the wave and they might not know how to swim. And so, it can be kind of like being out there surfing in a riptide. And if you don't know how to get out and you're fighting the current, you're just going to keep going further out. And so, unfortunately, when anything becomes trendy, there's a lot of misuse that occurs with it. I will say this, I'm neither pro nor negative against plant medicine itself. I feel that when it's used with intentionality, it's used with consciousness, and you are calling in certain things with divine protection, whatever path you're following, making sure you're doing that, and it's integrated immediately after, of course, it can be highly therapeutic. What I don't like and what I have a situation with at present are all the places that are charging a small fortune for people to take plant medicine, yet it's not being adequately contained, from the person that's running the group to the way it's integrated afterwards. afterwards, there's usually a huge lack or a gap in care that's occurring. So I will see people that have severe PTSD, and they're coming to me after they went and did ayahuasca thinking it was going to open them up and fix them or heal them. But the reality is they're flooding, they're spilling, they're now more sick because they went into these realms, often connecting to the lower 4D and the astral without any way of knowing how to orient themselves. And that can be very scary, especially if someone has a proclivity to psychosis or anything out of what our orientation norm would be here on the ground, or someone like myself that has gifts and they're not grounded. And they can come out with those gifts overly stimulated, overly activated, and then actually end up having more psychological or physical problems. So it's not that I'm pro or negative against plant medicine whatsoever. It's an individual experience. It's an individual medicine. It's highly sensitive. If it's used with integrity, if it's used with support, if it is firmly integrated, I'm off for it. I've used ketamine for my own PTSD. So I definitely understand the gains. However, it was used clinically, it was used with intention, it was also used shamanically. And so I was able to use it and then let it go. I'm seeing a lot of reliance on plant medicine, and that there, it just becomes a new psychotropic, a new way of, managing a situation without getting to the etiology. And the etiology is where you truly transform and transmute something. So it's very important to get to the root, whatever the presentation of symptoms may be.
Perfect. Okay, so I have another question for you about trauma. Do you feel that every human must go through a dark night of the soul in order to be self-actualized, or do you feel that that's incorrect?
I feel that, again, it's very hard to say any one size fits all for humanity, because the reality is it doesn't matter what generation you are. It's so much about frequency. So, I've spoken at a lot of starseed conferences recently, and there's been a lot of blanket statements about how these new 5D kids come in and they're just like perfectly intact. Well, that varies. Like a lot of us that came in at the older generations of star children, we came in with a lot of karma, a lot of baggage. I've spent decades working on mine. Okay. Yeah. I don't know that it's mandated necessity, from the creator that we have to experience a dark night of the soul. But I do know that for those of us that have been on earth embodied through this dark density that we're going through, it would almost be counterintuitive to say there wasn't something to clear.
Right.
Participating in this period of great darkness. For the younger kids that are coming in, yes, they tend to be more intact. I will say that. Like my 11-year-old intuitive, he never suppressed his gifts. He never, went through all of those things that I went through. But then again, we were co-creating together. He had support. So I do feel that that's always going to be an individual experience, and it's how we perceive it. The term dark night of the soul, it just sounds scary, And so I like to transition the language again, because it's energy, and say it's an invitation, because invitations aren't scary, and they bring us to a place where we can welcome something. And in welcoming the darkness, that's the beginning of transmuting it to light.
That's perfect. Well, the reason I asked is that Dr. Joe Delaney, who's in England, he teaches at a university there. He said he thinks that everyone, the setup here is set up that everyone has to go through that, and it just didn't. I don't quite know, because there may be a lot of souls that came here to experience an earth that's ascending and not ascent, and see what that felt like. So you can't really know what's right.
And I feel that, I don't know, you just said, I tease my friends, and my sons love to do it to me because they know I won't like push at them when they say it. But I don't know, when I was a therapist, when I was a clinical therapist, and when I was doing my doctorate, they got really upset. If a client said, I don't know, you were taught it was defensive posturing to kind of like push. And that never resonated with me. And now that I'm in this work, when someone says, I don't know, I'm like, okay, that's the invitation. Like it's not to push beyond. It's like the I don't know is humility. I don't know is medicine in shamanic work. I don't know is an opportunity. It's not something to be scolded. And I feel in this realm of the work, in the spiritual, I don't know from an earthbound perspective is realistic, because we can't possibly know it all. And that's part of the beauty and the mystery.
Well, that's where the surrender comes in, because then you might get a glimpse of it and be able to integrate that information to help others. I mean, so much of what you're talking about is your path to service for others. And that's very obvious that you're very dedicated to that. And so as far as the community of healers and light workers that you're in, are you seeing a trend there at all as far as their, I mean, people, I'm on Facebook and on a bunch of emails where people are really talking about the CMEs and the energy hitting the earth and the opportunity to activate more light in each cell. There's so much going on for people that are on this path. Are you seeing anything specifically about this time yourself, or disorientation with the CMEs or any of that?
It varies. It depends which group I'm in, because it's fascinating, because we're all, to me, it's oneness. That's what this is all about. And yet there's still some segregation that's happening in communities. Like you have like near-death experiences, and you have like the starseed groups. To me, I'm like, we're all one. I don't really know why we're all going into these. So my own individual bias and thesis of recent years has been really trying to get that back into more of a circle way of being. There tends to be more of a push, whichever community you're talking about. The one thing that I've seen that's universal right now is that most of us were isolating for a significant period of time. We were doing the work in solitude, which is absolutely fundamental in the beginning. And then it started shifting that we were going online. Now the big push seems to be coming into action on the ground as embodied community, which I feel is extremely exciting, because when you actually put that palpable energy into cohesion in person, the resonance goes even further up. And so it's really nice to see persons that were either hiding in the beginning behind books or websites now really stepping to the forefront. Persons who knew they were highly sensitive, or knew they were a starseed, or knew they were an experiencer, but kind of kept it contained and hidden and concealed from their day-to-day lives, are starting to color outside of the lines. And that's the part that really excites me.
Right. Me too. And that's the part that's the opportunity to really have creative problem solving for all of the things that we need to change and evolve here, because there's so many opportunities to bring in higher knowing and higher consciousness, but you have to be able to surrender and trust and have a daily practice and all of that stuff. What about a daily practice? Are you recommending that to most of your people?
Well, considering that we're in a spiritual war right now, I would say the daily practice that is so essential that so many sensitives aren't doing is when you wake up, clear your field. I don't care how you're doing it, okay? Because everybody's different. But when we're going into the dream body state, if you're going in unprotected, if you're not, declaring yourself your sovereign and asking your teams of light to be with you and to only interact with the higher 4D and beyond, quite often you're coming back into this state of consciousness when you awake in the morning with a few little hijackers or a few little disqualified vibrations that are joining you. And if you're not cognizant of that energy, it's very easy to think that those voices or those feelings or those thoughts are you. And they're quite often not, but they gravitate towards the lower darkness and the density that's really on the surface of Earth right now. So clearing your field when you wake up, whether it's just with water, a bath, a shower, whether it's through visualization, or meditation, or simply a decree. It doesn't matter how you do it, just please do it, because it allows you to come back into your sovereign power. It allows you to let go of anything that's not in resonance to your true divine sovereign light, and it shifts the whole vibration of your entire day. And the caveat there is, if before you go to bed, you really release any energy that is not yours back to sender or to the light, whichever's for the highest and best, and also call back your sovereign power before you sleep. Those two things can shift how you're receiving and perceiving what's happening on the ground right now. It also allows what's happening in the unseen realms to not have a direct impact on your oversoul.
Wow, that's so perfect. And I love the idea that a decree, when you realize how powerful you are and that you're creating your own reality, then you have responsibility to do that, right?
Yes.
So let's show people your website real quick, and then we can talk about what you're going to be doing at Ions. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Is that good? Okay.
All good.
Yeah, good. Okay. So here's your beautiful website, and you can show me where you want me to go. I'll just.
That's it. And there's some NDE interviews on there. If you're interested in those, I should probably update them, but there's a bunch. It tells you a little bit about what I do. My practice is very integrative. So you're going to get a little bit of everything with me. That's the fun. So yes, again, integrating all those fun things and testimonials, tons of interviews that'll come up slowly because there's too many, but people love those things.
Right. Oh, this is so great. Well, so what people need to know is that so much of what you're offering, there was a quote just above, can't be taught. And that's what it's a resonance. It's a remembering, actually, I think, of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here we are with the 2024 Ions Conference. Yeah. So, is there anything else on the site that you'd like me to show?
No, I would just say if you're interested in what I do, check out the expertise page, because it gives you a little bit of idea more about my credentials, what I've studied, since there have been so many different paths. But again, I never go in with a prescription. Having worked in clinical fields for so long, it's important for me to meet individuals soul to soul. And then whatever arises is in the moment. It's holy. It's in the now. It's sacred. The past comes through, yet it's not really the emphasis of my work. I'm not the person you go to decode all your past lives. There's a place for that in the healing, yet it's not my emphasis, because if that kind of information comes through, it's only coming through to support the here and now.
Right. Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. And I think that what you're offering is not old world, but traditional healing practices with indigenous traditional healing. So by offering all of those and your own personal frequency, you're giving people a glimpse of who they really are so they can remember and maybe heal a lot faster, because the restrictions of the stories or the cultural programming, all of that gets to be released, and you can get to the core of the love that you are. And self-love is a big part of this, isn't it?
Oh, I would say it's the core. you know, because we've been indoctrinated to believe that love is something outside of us and that love must be earned or given or received. But we are love. At our core nature, we are love, and love seeks nothing. Love is, love serves. And
Right.
so it's that remembrance that's really, really powerful.
Right. And the purpose where we've been looking outside ourselves for acknowledgement or direction in a lot of ways. What I love about what you do is you're helping people find their own direction. It's and by not giving diagnoses that are life sentences, that and that's again part of a lot of the new age systems. Once they give you a numerology number, an Enneagram number, all of those things, it's like, oh, but you can have the dark side or the good side of it. And it's like, no, I think we're changing every day, and you could wake up as somebody totally different the next day if you choose.
Well, we're multidimensional beings. So to put ourselves in this finite trajectory is very dangerous, you know? So, and that it seems that we've been, because we were taught that system, it's intuitive for a lot of people to go back to like this logical, masculine nomenclature way of being. But the reality is, for us to fully heal, we have to embody the masculine and the feminine. And the feminine energies don't care so much for that.
Well, I was talking, I was at a potluck this past weekend, and I was talking to somebody who is about 20 years younger than I am. And we were talking about the divine masculine, divine feminine, and how cultural, that everyone has a retooling, repurposing of their perspective in process right now, because we're going from not a hierarchical masculine feminine teeter-totter where it's a masculine leadership and feminine's down, and then feminine goes, we're at the 0 point in the middle where everyone, I've had my own business all these years. I've had to have a lot of masculine in my field. So everyone's having to retool, and then see how that's shown out here, because we don't have that unified cultural pathway yet. I mean, very few cultures have figured out how to keep an equality and take the blessings from both attributes and integrate them. And we're still learning that. Don't you agree?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
And I look forward to what that creates, because that'll be really powerful when both of those aspects of humans get a chance to dance together instead of combat each other.
And that's the exciting call to action right now. I mean, that's literally, we have the power to co-create that, rather than giving our energy to simply venting or calling out what gripes at us about current situations that we're in. We can change that dichotomy by meeting it with both parts of ourselves. And what does this have to offer me? How can I receive this from a more balanced, sacred union perspective within? Because we cannot co-create that on the surface. And that's part of the struggle here and now, when we aren't doing the work internally first.
Right. I use the Saint Germain work a lot, the I Am decrees, and I really love that. And I have found that the use of the violet flame and using that as a clearing tool has really helped a lot of my clients and myself. And it's so easy. I mean,
It's
it
so
really
easy. Yes.
so easy.
And it's so available. It was really gifted to us for this time. So extremely potent. And there's so many awesome people that are making really good content using those type of energies and putting them out there for free. So bless them and all that receive them.
Yes. Okay. So one more question before we go on to your ions talk about frequencies. I personally love using digital music behind me, brain focus work, and all sorts of stuff. Do you find that you use music and frequency in your therapies a lot? I mean, personally and with your clients?
Both. I mean, my friends think it's so funny when they come over to my house because they know they're going to find a color of the day, an angel of the day, and a sound of the day. I just find for me, it gives me a little bit focus because I can be so like in the higher realms, and I need to always be grounding and bring myself into service mode, which is embodied. And so just really calling out to spirit and seeing what is in resonance for me that day helps me personally. For clients, I never know until I open the ceremony that occurs before we do the integrative work or the psychological work. But always spirit comes through with a particular vibration or a particular level of service we're going to offer that day. So as so many have already said, frequency is the medicine of the future. This is a reclamation of really knowing that intuitively that we've all been operating this way. We just didn't understand it. And because there's so many systems and so many lower vibrational ways of being that are blocking or limited the full expansion of our frequency, we have forgotten how powerful we are. As we evolve in consciousness, as we begin to become aware that we have these beautiful auric fields that go out so far and can pick up so much information, mastering our own frequency, being sensitive to our own frequency, knowing the needs of the different frequencies that we are most intimate with, for lack of better terms, will become a powerful way of self-healing.
It's beautiful. And I love it because these are the empowerment segments of this period, is that there's so much, as you said, free on YouTube and free amazing work that's out there that allows you to totally change your mood and get into creative mode, because I believe that we're here to co-create with the universe at a really high level. And but you need to sometimes get a little bit of juice to get you there.
Yes.
Okay, so next question is part of your talk at IONS. So Brooke is going to be a speaker this year at the IONS conference in Phoenix, and it's at the end of this month. And for people that want to know more about that, please go to conference.ions.org. And I am so excited for you because I know you're going to do a great job. Could you talk a little bit about your talk? Your talk is about your, let's see, I've got it right here, multidimensional psychic protection for experiencers.
Yes. So
Cool.
This theme this year is transformed by light or transformation. And so that was part of what co-created this for me. But truthfully, last time I spoke at IONS in person in 2022, I believe, I spoke about grounded luminosity and the importance of really bringing that higher awareness down into the physical. And I shared a lot of my own personal mishaps. And during the Q&A, the audience told me that they really wanted me to talk about how from those mishaps, I really learned about psychic protection and working with the multidimensional soul. And so this year, I just decided as a love offering for our awakening world, I wanted to emphasize that because it goes so far beyond crystals and sage, which is what so many persons identify as protective mechanisms. It comes down to what energy are you resonating with? Are you a light worker that's aligned to fear? There are many right now that are being overwhelmed by it because of root chakra or lower chakra issues. And so though they have this higher awareness, it hasn't been pulled down and integrated. Therefore, the fear is calling in all sorts of false light and lower vibrational situations and circumstances and also people. So for me, taking a piece of humility and owning how difficult my integration years were in service and saying, okay, during this period, here's what I learned. And I've since used it with countless experiencers and highly sensitives across the world to great success. And so it's really opening my play box of beautiful multidimensional toys that you yourself can self-actualize and utilize at your own discretion for your own well-being in service to our awakening world.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it's not just playing Krishna Das in the background of your house.
No, it's
They
not.
hate that. They hate that. So, this subject has come up a lot this month with the people around me, and it's been fascinating. My partner's teaching classes on protection, and the identification of who you're talking to. That. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about that so that people could feel safe? I mean, basically, that's what we're talking about. I'll just reframe this. We're talking about the fact that we are incredible, powerful beings, and we have access to all that is, but we need to feel safe to be in that light and to not harm, do no harm, basically. And so that's where I'm hoping people that are highly sensitive, where they don't have protection and they're just reading their environment as for their own physical protection, but maybe not for their spiritual.
Yes. We're at this crossroads right now. We're not out of the 3D. We're not even out of the 4D. We're like very in this messy space. And unfortunately, there are many people that are awakened to the 5D, but aren't there yet, self-included. Like, we're constantly working towards it. But what happens is they might have an awareness that they're resonant to this, but they're struggling with all the stuff, like so many of us right now. And we are like frequency antennas. Whatever we give our power to, our greatest resonance to, becomes what calls in whatever else it is. So like always seeks like. And if we're operating from our wounds, which unfortunately, when you're a highly sensitive or an intuitive and you're newly awakening, if that hasn't been cleared, quite often, no matter how beautiful and yummy all the butterfly medicine is up in the ethers, you can't bring it down, as we've spoke to. And so they're sometimes unconsciously attracting false light. And that can be the wrong kind of teachers, the wrong kind of persons in their life, or the wrong kind of guides on the inner planes. I cannot tell you how often I've heard from clients that their guides were being mean to them or their guides were being cruel. And I mean, that's a huge red flag immediately, because guides of the highest light and resonance, guides of the 5D and beyond, particularly the 6D to 12D, they are never going to bring harm. They are never going to make you feel inadequate or less than fully loved. So if something's in your field and it's asking you to behave a certain way, or it's informing poor decisions, or you feel small or dirty or shame, that's false light, or it's an entity or something of the darkness. And that's something you do not want to be in connection with. So it's very important to break those links, to be aware of where in your field you might need an extra buffer. If you have to be in low vibrational environments often, then it's important to know what you can have with you to transmute it in the moment. But a lot of it comes down to awareness. Anything that is not bringing a light-oriented expansion or intelligence or divine love into your field is not an energy, person, situation, or place you want to be in alignment with. So it's really in the beginning about knowing your own limitations and areas you may lack protection, and then perceiving that through love, finding ways to comfort it gently, and then going out into the world and helping others do that ultimately we will come to a vibration where protection is no longer necessary because we're operating from pure divine love. Yet we are not there yet. And to be of service in this current split, in this divided nation and divided world, it's very, very important to take autonomy of your own sensitivities and have intelligence about that and the way that you carry them in the world. And I say this with deep humility because I myself have been an oracle for all sorts of things I am not proud of when I didn't maintain integrity about my energetic boundaries and gifts.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the lesson. You have to have the contrast to know, oops, I did it wrong this time and I'll do it better next time. So that makes sense. Well, this is fabulous. And I know that I want to make sure that people know that if they want to learn more from you, to go to your website, which is Brooke Grove Healer. Is healing? Healing.com.
Yeah.
And then they also can, if they can't go to the IONS conference in Phoenix this year, you can buy the recordings and watch it online. You can watch it live online with live stream, and then you do still get the recordings. It's very fair price. And even if you go to the conference, a lot of times there's so much going on at the same time, you can't see all the ones you want. So I love getting the recordings because then instead of Netflix, I'm watching that at dinner for months. But fantastic. And Brooke, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and the love that you are. And I just can't wait to see what else you come up with yet, because it feels like you're just getting started on your journey. It really is exciting to watch.
Thank you, Kathy. It was an honor to be in your presence again
Oh,
and soak up all your juicy energy as well. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you, dear. Okay. Well, gotta go now. Thank you. And everyone go to brookgrovehealing.com. I know you'll really benefit from this beautiful work.
Thank you.